Welcome to Trust the Badge. In this episode of Trust the Badge, we are joined by Chief Bart Knowles, who is the Chief of Police at the University of Florida Police Department. Chief Knowles brings over 36 years of law enforcement experience, having served as SWAT Team Commander and Drug Unit Commander at the Gainesville Police Department. Chief Knowles retired from the Gainesville Police Department to continue his career at UFPD, where he has served for the last 14 years. In this interview, Chief Knowles will share with us what inspired him to join law enforcement, the unique aspects of campus policing compared to municipal policing, and the challenges and strategies in building trust between campus police and the university community. We'll also discuss the training programs in place for campus police officers, the importance of transparency, and finally, the collaborative initiatives that involve students in shaping a safer campus environment. Please welcome Chief Knowles.
Good afternoon. My name is Bart Knowles. I'm the Chief of Police here at the University of Florida Police Department. I've spent over 36 years in law enforcement, and my career spans from I was a deputy sheriff early on in Southwest Florida, returned to the city of Gainesville, where I was a police officer for 20 years at the Gainesville Police Department. I rose up through the ranks up to the rank of captain. During that time, I was the SWAT team commander, the drug unit commander, and worked in a whole host of other roles at the police department over my career. And then had the opportunity about 14 years ago to move over here to UFPD. So I was able to retire from the Gainesville Police Department and continued my career at UF, and have been happy to be here. Love working on the University of Florida campus.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time again, Chief Knowles. It sounds like quite the background. Just to get started, what inspired you to join law enforcement in the first place?
So, very good question. And, I came up in a period where my father was in law enforcement. Just to give you a little background there as well. My father was a deputy sheriff. Two of his brothers were Florida highway patrolmen, and another brother of his was a deputy sheriff in Southeast Florida. I always, as a kid, came up saying I would absolutely never be a police officer or deputy sheriff. Not that I had some negative experience. I just felt like it just wasn't me. I thought I would take a different career path. And as time evolved and as I began to grow, I saw some of the things, the positive impacts and things that you would see in the community that were good things that police and deputy sheriffs did. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be able to help. I wanted to be able to make a difference in some way, shape, form, or another. And, often you would see things on TV that put law enforcement in a bad light. And,
Right.
And yet every single day in every city, and, throughout our country, there are remarkable things that happen that police do that are never captured, at least in the public eye. And so I just wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to make a difference and be able to serve our community. And I enjoy that. I like being in that position. I like being able to help. So that's really what's driven me over the years.
Sounds like obviously a great answer and a good reason to become a part of law enforcement. Many people that I interview on the podcast have similar stories, whether it's a personal story or it's like a family member that inspired them. But I always like the stories that come out of new people I interview when it comes to why they join law enforcement, because it's always interesting. But what do you find unique about campus policing compared to municipal law enforcement as you've transitioned to campus police?
Yeah. So, one of the most defining, I think, points that I've found here in a university type setting are resources. If you affiliate with the university, which is who we generally interact and deal with day in and day out, if there's a problem, if you have a challenge, if there's something going on in your life, I feel like the university setting has a tremendous amount of resources to be able to offer to support, those that affiliate with us, that work with us day in and day out. Sadly, I think in a lot of municipalities, you come across a lot of conditions or a lot of circumstances where individuals are just having a really, really rough time of it. And you get dispatched as a police officer. You go there, you do everything you can in those few minutes of interaction with them to help them or guide them. But at the end of the day, often there's just not the volume of resources that you have at your disposal. Here at UF, in most cases, we do. If we interact with a student, faculty, staff member, and they're having a hard time, we have a way to help them to solve their problems and hopefully, improve their conditions.
That's definitely something that I want to talk more about, especially because when it comes to resources, it varies across many police departments, even throughout the state. There will be some with little, and there will be some with an excess amount, which could be a good thing when it comes to providing money for training and all sorts of resources for police officers. But that's a good thing, especially in the university setting where the police officers here, especially UFPD, are provided these resources that they vitally need. I remember interviewing in one of my first podcast episodes someone who used to police in the New Jersey area, and their police department was so underfunded that they had to buy their own equipment, their own vests, their own guns. It was a bad situation for the officers themselves because they're taking that out of their own paycheck. So it's really good to hear that university resources have that. In your previous experiences, have you had complications when it came to resources or no?
Well, and keep in mind the resources that I'm referring to are bigger than the police department. These are counseling and wellness services that we offer here. These are EAP opportunities that we have through human resources. I mean, so it's bigger than the PD from a resource perspective. That's really what I'm focused on. Is the resources throughout the campus and throughout the University of Florida, not just specifically the police department. So, that's where I'm focused. And I would say that that is the case when you move into most municipalities. They don't have the volume or the variety of resources that it takes to deal with the majority of problems out there as you interact with different individuals that are in crisis or having some sort of a challenge during that day. I think things have improved substantially in cities over the years. It's gotten a lot better. They have different programs that are out there and available, but day in and day out, just my personal experience has been here on this campus. If I interact with someone that's an affiliate, we can find a way to help them out. Whereas, and a lot of it has to do with the structure, the network, the layout of the university system, and that we are affiliated, right? So either we're a student, or a faculty member, or a staff member, and so there's that connectivity there. But in most municipalities, they just don't have the resources that it takes to be able to do that. So, for example, even something as simple as if you're an employee here, you have insurance with us, right? So if you're having some sort of medical challenge, we can steer you to HR. It doesn't work that way in a municipality, right? You're dealing with different individuals, all walks of life. They may not be even employed, and so their resources may be limited. So if they're homeless, you're trying to reach out and connect them with resources, but a lot of times it's extremely limited. And so that's the big difference, I think. And it's just the networks, the layout, the structure of the university system, and how we are set up, and quite frankly, who we interact with the most, right? It's often with our own people. So that's the difference, and that's how it is.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. And that does say a lot about university compared to municipalities when it comes to the resources they provide and the types of assistance that police departments give here. To transition a little bit, in your experience here at UFPD, what are the main challenges in building trust between campus police and students, faculty, and staff, if there are any?
Yeah, so I think anytime you're in the law enforcement profession, you're going to have to break down barriers because they're there. And with you, if you're a person that you don't recognize that, then you're positioning yourself poorly as a law enforcement officer. So there's going to be barriers there. And so the goal is for you as law enforcement to be pretty transparent, pretty open, providing opportunities for a community to interact with you so they can get to know their police department, understanding what it is you do, what kind of resources that you offer, and generate or build that whole communication opportunity so that your community is willing to come and talk to you, right? And if you can get that jump started, it really flows fairly well after that. It's not all rainbows and roses, don't get me wrong, but if you can open up these lines of communications, you're on a really, really good start to be able to build relationships and relations with your community. I think that's really big. Now, what's interesting, I spoke earlier about the resources on the University of Florida campus, and probably many universities everywhere, and how that's a huge plus, for us, right? Well, unlike a lot of communities and municipalities, we have a large turnover, primarily with our student staff, our student population. And so as a result, it's not like you build a network of, say, I'll call them supporters or people that are there to advocate what we can do, that, we're transparent, we're willing to help, and they're there for 10, 15, 20 years. Doesn't work that way on a campus, right? In most cases, I don't really know what the statistics are, but probably most individuals that come onto this campus as a new student probably are only here 2 to 3 years because of a multitude of reasons, right? They're not successful here. They decide to move on to another institution, maybe, you name it, right? I don't know that, statistically speaking, everybody's here for the full 4 to 5 years as a whole. By the way, I do know that's improved. I was listening to a stat recently where they talked about the graduation success of UF and how it's grown tremendously, which I think is remarkable. But nonetheless, we have turnover, even if it's every 4 years, you have turnover. And so you have to constantly be establishing that network of students, especially, that understand, A, that they even have a police department, right? And B, right, that we're here to help you. If we can help you to be safe, we can help you to protect your property, help you in our community, and you can help yourself. That is a big win, because I have less than 100 police officers here to manage close to 55,000 students. I think around 25 to 30,000 employees. And then you take away all the activities like sporting events and concerts and things like that, where you bring individuals onto our campus. So we've got to we need a force multiplier out there. So we have to take, our less than 100 police officers and build programs that will help individuals to help us to keep this campus safe, right? And so it goes to things like simple stuff. See something, say something. We push that campaign message out routinely, and reporting crimes as part of that, or activities or suspicious activities. We need our community members out there communicating back to us, letting us know, hey, I saw something that doesn't look right. Call it in. We'll go take a look at it, right? More often than not, it's probably nothing. But every now and then, it's going to be something. Their instincts were absolutely spot on. Something is going awry in a particular area, and that's why it's so important for them to report it. We can get there, triage it, deal with the particular issue and problem. And to me, that's really what it's all about. It is so important for us to have this open line of communication with our community, having the persona that it's not this group of individuals, meaning us, the police, that if you call us, we're going to act like we're, you're disturbing us. I mean, that's what we're here to do. We need individuals calling in, sharing information with us, telling us things that don't look right. If they see something on social media that is concerning, reporting that to us so that we can take a look at it. Again, in most cases, more often than not, we look into these types of scenarios that I've mentioned, and it's nothing. And we catalog it, right? We report it, we monitor it, and it really is nothing. But every once in a while, we have something, and that has happened here. We have something that we look at and we go, this is really critical, and we need to put all our resources on this particular problem and resolve it before it becomes a problem. We have a I'll call it an access point where you can provide information called silent witness, and I think it's important for police departments, universities, to have multiple methods for people to communicate in and get their concern into you. And so I think things like silent witness, I think things like, picking up the phone and calling into our dispatch, which, by the way, is our preferred method, because it gives us an opportunity to ask questions to help us zero in the resources to exactly where they need to be, versus maybe if it's a little bit more vague, it's kind of like, we'll give it our best, but we were really limited on information. We like getting that, but we'll take the information however we can get it. But having those access points is critical. I think utilizing programs like our Gator Safe app, we encourage everybody who affiliates with UF to download the Gator Safe app. There's resources on there. There's ways for you to communicate with our dispatch center directly through your smart device. And again, just taking advantage of that opportunity to communicate with your PD, whether it's here at the University of Florida or your community where you live, or another university where you attend, it's important that you open up that line of communication.
Okay, and how does your department engage with students outside of responding to incidents that happen on campus?
Now, that's a good question. So, one of our primary is what we call scope, and that is our student community oriented policing efforts. If you ever go to our website, we've got a little snapshot on it in there. But basically, it's a community policing type model that we use to go out and engage with our students. And so our officers will go out in a whole host of different communities that we can tap or access to. So, for example, if you live in housing on campus, we'll try to organize different meetings with all the different housing areas on campus. If you are in a fraternity or sorority, we'll try to certainly do that as well. Athletics, we try to tap all the different access points on campus to be able to go out and share our message of safety, public safety, how to keep yourself safe, programs that we have. So that's really the critical piece, and that is one of our primary points, or from a systematic approach. But in general terms, it really goes back to that whole communication piece we've been talking about here, is getting out into our community. We tell our officers, when you're out, if you're on a traffic stop and you engage somebody and you have an opportunity to speak with them about some issue that they're having, or a problem, something we can support them with, start there. It's okay. It's okay to do that once you complete your traffic stop. Help them. Do what you can do to again, open that line of communication, build that relationship. But yeah, I think the SCOPE program is our model program for interacting with our students.
Can you discuss the importance of transparency and how your department communicates openly with the campus community?
So, transparency is a phrase that's used throughout the country. I think everyone recognizes how important that is, and so following through with that's a whole nother task, right? You can say it; it's easy to say, but you have to follow through with it. And so I think the transparency piece even goes back a little bit further than being transparent. At the end of the day, whether an agency chooses or not to be transparent, I believe our state statutes are going to require you to. Bottom line is we have something called the Florida Sunshine Law that requires us to provide information, reports out to the community and public. And so whether you like it or not, your information is going to be put out there. And so to me, it starts before transparency. It starts with the training of your officers, the expectation, the hiring of officers, so they understand, and you formulate this group of individuals that understand what the mission is. And in general terms, our mission here at UFPD, clearly number one is safety. We want to keep our campus members safe. But neck and neck with that's going to be us treating people right, helping them, taking time to listen, taking time to not interject when it's right to do so, right? Or taking that time to listen and help people out. And while sometimes we as police, we are in situations where we have to take control, we have to stop people for a moment and interrupt them and gather additional details, information, for whether it be a safety issue or what have you. When you can take the time to do that, treat people right, follow your policies and procedures, hold your officers accountable to policies and procedures. And if your officers act outside of the lines or outside of the boundaries, you hold them accountable. And by doing that, it makes it very, very simple to have a transparent organization. And so you can allow anybody to come in and take a look at the organization that you have as a whole, and share with them what it is that you do, share with them information about a particular incident that may be controversial. I think that's going to be critical in that. And so again, that whole transparency piece, I think the key to it is not when you have to be transparent. It starts well before that, and that's the key. And then that makes the transparency piece very, very simple. And my belief is, here at the University of Florida Police Department, we're going to follow the rules. We're going to do our best to help people. Does it mean we're perfect? No. But we're going to work at identifying our deficiencies and continue to improve upon that and share that outwardly. And if we make a mistake, we're going to own it. We're going to say we made a mistake, and here's what we're doing to correct that. And that's going to be how we're going to, we've been, and moving forward, we're going to continue with that. So, again, to me, the whole transparency piece really is a piece of, what's your history? What are you doing? And I think that if you speak to members of our community that interact, that know us, I think they'll tell you that we're very transparent. And then I feel like they would say, I hope that they would say that we're an agency that cares, and we're an agency that's going to help you out when in need.
Right. And as a student here at UF, I completely agree. As someone who has the Gator Safe app and the notifications coming into my phone when there's something going on campus, I always see how quick it is that you guys send out the notifications. There was, like, for example, there's a shooting here, or there's an incident here. Stay away from these streets. And then immediately, like, I get another notification telling me like the updates. And I feel like UFPD is very great when it comes to keeping the transparency to students, faculty, and staff, because everyone gets to know what's going on. But where do you draw the line specifically when it comes to what notifications to send out or things of that matter?
That's a good question. And I think to the general public, they think, well, that's easy. If there's a robbery in the city and it's right adjacent to campus, you put it out. Simple as that, right? Well, not exactly. And here's why: because we have to vet that information first. And so first we have to get the information, which we have a partnership with our city police department. And so we have to gather that information from them. We have to gather some details. We have to make certain that before we push that out, those details are as accurate as we possibly can make them, right? Or not make them, but as accurate as we can gather the details and present them, push them out. And so it's a little bit more challenging, because you'll have a crime that's occurred. And so the first thing that you're trying to do is there a threat to our community? And that's the key. Is if there's a threat to our community, then we have an obligation, as we should, to push out information so the campus community can, shelter, remain safe, whatever it may be. And as a result, though, we have to also be careful that we're not pushing out information over and over and over again. And it's, that's a false alarm. Told you there's a robbery here. Not wasn't. Sorry. And then I believe that communities will start losing faith in your police department to push out accurate information, and they'll wonder, really what's going on here. So often we spend a lot of time on the front end. When I say a lot of time, minutes, which is a lot of time in a serious incident, trying to validate this information, more specifically to incidents that occur off campus but are adjacent to us. So we're communicating with those agencies' dispatch centers. If they don't have the information, we're asking for their shift commander to communicate with our shift commander, which often, if it's a serious incident, there can be a little bit slow getting back to us. So often that's one of the struggles that we can have in these moments, is trying to get the information out, timely, so that it is truly beneficial to our campus members and those that are in the campus area. And we understand and realize time is of the essence. And so sometimes we'll gather very limited information, get the alert out, and I'm sure the recipient of there is probably thinking, really, wow, this is all you can tell me? And at the moment, yeah, it's all we can validate and find factually, because you'll get information that's misinformation. I'll give you an example. You might be provided the description of the victim, who is actually, but it's the suspect they're trying to describe, and it's a complete opposite description, right? So I don't want to push out information on a description that's not accurate. And so it's so critical that in minutes, our dispatch centers trying to gather that, and really I say minutes, really seconds. They're trying to gather as much information, get an alert out. And that's often why when you see that first alert that goes out, it's often very limited, just very, very limited information. And then in the meantime, they're scrambling, trying to work with the local agency. Now, when we have an event that occurs on campus, very different, because we control it. We can ask, our dispatchers are in direct communication with the officers. If they need, a bit of information, they can literally radio to the officer and say, can I have a suspect description, for example, and then get a real basic description, get it back, they type it in, boom, we can push the alert out. But I know probably is community members see these messages come out, they probably wonder from time to time, why is this information the way it is? It's actually pretty challenging to get information. And oh, by the way, sometimes victims get the information wrong and we find out after the fact, and then we have to push updates and because they told the officer, this is what happened, this is what it looks like. And then when the information is somewhat vetted over the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, they find out, no, that's not exactly how it occurred. And there's a whole host of reasons on why victims might do that. And to many cases, not their own fault. It's just they're involved in a pretty, significant event. It's hard to recall stuff in the moment. And so again, it's important for us to get that information out accurately, and we work hard to get it out in a timely fashion.
Right, and I really see your point when it comes to how it's so important, or why it's so important to first validate the information before you send it out, because it could easily be misunderstood, or something where then you would have to send another message saying, oh, that's not completely true, this happened instead. So I definitely see how that is very important, especially in a university setting with thousands of students here.
And the reality of it is, it's very beneficial to us at times. If we can get a really good, accurate description of the suspect, often someone who receives our alerts may see those individuals. And I'll give you an example of that. We had a robbery that occurred in kind of the southeastern portion of our campus, and this has been a few years ago. And we got the information out. I was actually out in my car, out patrolling, looking for the suspects myself. And somebody called in and said, hey, I think these individuals you just pushed the alert on are standing outside of my apartment complex in the parking lot. I roll around there with another officer. Sure enough, it's them. We took them into custody. Case was solved right there, that quick. So it behooves us to get accurate information out to our community members, and if they're willing to call us, we benefit from that. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a really good plan and a really good idea that UFPD has here. I would say that there's no problem, at least as my experience as a UF freshman. I've not had any problems with when it comes to transparency or communication or with anything of the UFPD. You guys are obviously doing great when it comes to that. But to sort of transition the topic over to how we directly communicate to the community, what kind of training do campus police officers receive to help them engage more effectively with students? Because as you know, engaging with students is a completely different topic than engaging with other community members.
I will tell you this, there's a high expectation here for our officers to engage anyone they interact with a open, approachable type demeanor. And in, full transparency, we don't go out and say, I want you to treat a student differently than somebody that's traveling through on an RTS bus. Now, we do talk about things such as, if you have a student, for example, that has their laptop stolen, and that information on that laptop is not backed up, and that has a semester's worth of data on it that is vital to their class. And if that laptop's stolen, they have no way of reproducing that, that's going to be pretty devastating to that particular student, and they're probably going to be in crisis. And maybe to someone that has a little bit more life experience, they would go, it's a laptop. Worst things in life could happen. You just get another laptop. For that student, that is critical right there. Their semesters flashing before their eyes. And so it's important for our officers, and we talk about this, but it's important for our officers to understand that. And I believe they do, because we work through the whole dynamics of being a student. And what I mean is the discussions in our training and our field training, how important it is for us to hear our students and understand that many of them are legally adults, but it's their first time being away from home. And so they're going to have challenges that they're not used to, and helping them through that. That's different, as you kind of led us into this question about. It's different than a lot of people that you might meet just during a traditional traffic stop that are a local citizen or somebody here, maybe a faculty member. This student may be a freshman, first time away from home, has no initial friends here early on. They came here by themselves. And they may be struggling with a little bit of homesickness and things like that. And so any interaction with police can be significant to them. And to the officer, it may seem like just another interaction with one of our students, faculty, or staff members, for example. And that's why it's important to take time, hear what their problems are. If they seem like, a young person that's struggling, let's again connect them with resources, find out what their problem is, see what we can do as a conduit to help get them connected. There's so many different resources again here, especially for our students, that we can connect them with. The other piece of that too is for our officers to understand those resources, right? So depending on what what kind of problem the individual is faced with, our officers need to know the different resources that we have out there. And so, we discuss those in our roll call briefings in our field training program, but we also ask them to rely. Hey, if you interact with someone and they're a student, for example, and you're not quite sure, how we can help them, you feel like they need some sort of support, that's when you call a supervisor. Supervisor can get involved and help with those different resources, help that student get connected. We have on-call staff outside of the police department from student affairs that if we have a student that's having a challenge, we can reach out to student affairs and really kind of hand it off to student affairs to some degree, because a lot of times it's uncomfortable and we get it. You're dealing with a police officer with this big ballistic vest and guns and badges and things of that nature. And if we can hand it off to student affairs and they come in and support, we certainly try to do that. The other thing, Tim, I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but we also have a co-responder program here. And basically that's a police officer is assigned with a mental health clinician. And we usually have one per shift for the most part. And if we have students in crisis or students is involved in some sort of challenge, we can call that co-responder team over. That co-responder, which is the clinician, they have access to a ton of additional resources. And so we can actually pair that person in crisis or that person in need with the co-responder. We can take them back to our station if the person's willing to do so, or in a different office setting, and let them work through whatever problems they're having, help connect them with resources. It's a great program, and it's one that we utilize. And our officers, say, for example, they interact with a student who's having a challenge. Often they will call for the co-responder team to come over and support them because they have some additional training and access to additional resources. So we like being able to engage those co-responder teams when appropriate.
Yeah, that sounds like a great program. And I've actually heard of similar programs in other municipalities. I believe the first kind of this program was started in Texas, but it's a really good program. It has showed progress of how these calls are affected and how they turn out. Because with these programs, the mental health responders usually make these scenarios much less intense, and it makes it better for the person who called. And it therefore just makes the entire situation better rather than sending a police officer who may or may not have the mental health awareness training to help those who need the help. So I believe that. And how long has this program been in effect so far?
It's been in effect, I believe, 2 years, roughly, right around there.
Okay. And how have you seen the benefits and of how well it's been doing so far of the program?
So I can't. I'm not prepared to give you any statistical data.
Right. No, that's fine.
But no, I mean we've seen improvements. We've seen where our Baker Act, which is our involuntary in custody situations where we take an individual into custody and take them to a mental health facility. Those numbers have been reduced a little bit in the sense that you have a clinician that comes in now and can truly evaluate an individual. Whereas before, you've got a police officer that has very little training to come in and now evaluate a person. And if the individual made some sort of a statement previously, said, I'm going to do X, whatever that is, right? That would harm themselves or others, then the officer was not going to run the risk of, I not Baker Act this individual and I leave and that person harms himself or someone else. They would go right in and make the Baker Act. And that was appropriate and still is today. However, when you bring the clinician in, they have the time and the training and the skill set to evaluate that individual and assess whether or not this person is truly a threat to themselves or others. And if they deem that they're not a threat to themselves or others, even though they may have said something that would have initially led you to believe that, then a Baker Act is not initiated. They set up, help to support them in setting up sessions to meet with a counselor or a psychiatrist, and the list goes on, to try to help that person and get them the resources that they need. So we've seen some improvements there. I think also it's a great tool for de-escalating, incidents with law enforcement. If we can get there, if you have an individual that is been there, the situation has been heightened by the response of uniformed police. If it's safe, we kind of back off and let the clinician interact with that individual. A lot of times they can de-escalate that person and, again, build that bridge that gap. And now we can find ourselves in a situation where either we have to, because the clinician can Baker Act. We may still have to Baker Act them, but now they're Baker Act, we're able to take them into custody with little to no force and take them in, versus maybe somebody that with law enforcement arriving on scene and we explain that we're going to Baker Act them, they're just very resistant to that person in uniform, and we may have had to use some level of minimal force to take them into custody, which we prefer absolutely not to do. So I think it's been a great program for us.
Right, and de-escalation is a huge topic that obviously is discussed many times when it comes to policing. And I'm sure when it comes to at least UFPD, you guys have very great training, especially with this program that you have with mental health. It should be not much of a problem because of how effective these programs can be. But when it comes to the flip side, how does your department handle complaints or concerns from students about their interactions with police?
No. Again, I want to broaden it a little bit, because whether they're a student or maybe somebody from the Gainesville community that had interaction with us,
right?
We're going to treat everyone fairly, everyone the same in general terms, right? So if they have a complaint that they want to make, typically they can call into the police department, right into our dispatch center, ask to speak to a supervisor, explain what that question or concern or complaint is. They could send it in through a silent witness. At least we would look at it, but to follow through an actual complaint, we need a complainant because of the Police Officer Bill of Rights, and to those officers' defense, you need to have a complainant, somebody that can articulate what the complaint was about. Now, I will tell you that if somebody were to make an anonymous complaint over a particular incident, we will go back. If there's body-worn camera footage, we go back and review that. And if we were to see something that an officer violated department policy, even though we didn't have a complainant, we would still address that complaint specifically, because we have the physical evidence in front of us, right? So we can see that, we can identify that that's the case. Interestingly enough, the body-worn cameras have been a pretty remarkable tool, I think, for police for a lot of reasons. It obviously captures these incidents that happen. It's very important. I think that it also, it's a good check and balance for us to, remind us that, hey, we are public servants and we need to be careful and mindful about what we say. And when you're being recorded, you tend to do that, and you do a much better job. And then I would also say that we've actually, in my opinion, we've seen our external complaints decline. Because I think, one, the officers, they're fully aware they're being recorded, so they know that they need to, cross their T's and dot their I's in their communication. And as a result, I think that's the case. And the other piece too is I have taken complaints where I've had individuals call in, and these have actually reduced over the years since the body-worn cameras have become more known throughout the communities. But I would have people that would call in and make a complaint, and then as soon as I announced to them that, I would go back and look at the body-worn camera footage, whoa, I mean, they would really change their approach and often back off, and then they would drop the complaint. I would still go back and review it, because if somebody makes a complaint, I want to see that we're doing the right thing, whether somebody's complaining or not. I wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing. And more often than not, I would go in and review the video and identify that, in fact, the officer had not done anything wrong. If anything, heck, the officer probably could have taken more action in many of the cases, and they chose not to try to de-escalate that. But I do think, related to your question regarding complaints, the body-worn camera has been a definite benefit for police and for communities across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about body cameras themselves, I've seen how beneficial they can be for both police and community members. In many research studies that show how de-escalation is much more frequent. There are less complaints, and officer and responses from community members about officers are much better than without body cameras. So that's definitely a huge plus, and I'm glad that we have that here at UFPD. And also, do you have any more collaborative initiatives that UFPD has that are in place to involve students in shaping campus safety?
Yeah, so we've got a multitude of different programs. One of our programs is RAD, which is our Rape Aggression Defense Program. And there's actually two parts to that program. There's one that we have an abbreviated version. It's a session for about 2 hours. And then I think we have another one. And I know we have another one. It's the full session that I believe is a 24-hour class. I think it's a 3-day class, but roughly right around there. And so we put those out to the community. And not only do we do our students here at UF, but remember, we also have PK Young, which is a K through 12 school here on campus. So we do Rad Kids as well. And so we go over there and we train our kids that are, the parents, put them into the program and on how to have, some awareness, some ability to react should they be encountered with some sort of serious scenario interaction with an unknown adult, things of that nature. We also will open them up to our university faculty and staff, if they're kids or they themselves want to participate as well. So we have those types of programs that are out there. We go out. We have a lot of different programs. Everything's as simple as bike registrations, because that helps us to protect ourselves against theft. But we'll also do property like computers, things of that nature. We will also kind of customize programs based on the need. And so a lot of times we'll go and meet with different, say, sororities or different groups or the University Athletic Association and talk about different things such as general safety. We'll talk about texting and driving. I mean, we'll have a whole host of different types of topics that we'll kind of customize for, the group based on what they feel like their need is. And so, we'll do our best to try to curtail that or prepare a training that will fit their needs. But we have a community services division, and that's their job primarily, is to go out and educate. We start off every year with preview, and you should have gone through one of the preview sessions as well, I believe. And so, while we always ask for more time, and unfortunately, there's so much information they're trying to condense. We're limited a little bit on the amount of time that we have, but grateful that the university is able to give that to us. We try to hit as much information in that short segment as possible. So. There's pretty much, in my opinion, if you have a need as a student here on campus, we're gonna work hard to get you what you need to keep you safe and see you prosper here. This is a great institution and tough to get into. Hey, I throw kudos to you and all the other students who got into UF. Man, this is a tough place to get into. I would have never been able to get in here at the time if I applied today, back when I was in school. We got a lot of smart kids here, a lot of really, really good kids. And, we want to build a good relationship with them, and we want them to feel safe too, right? I mean, I want them to be in a place where they're comfortable, they can interact with others, they can study, have fun, and feel good. And they know that UF is not only a great place, but once they graduate and move on and are successful, I want them to look back and really think, man, what an incredible time I had and what an incredible place. And that's really what it's all about to me.
Absolutely, and that makes complete sense. I'm glad that UF has these multiple programs to help out not only students but other faculty and staff. And going back to what you're talking about during preview, I do remember during preview seeing the police officer on stage talking about the different resources that UFPD provides, the Gator Safe app, all these sorts of things that UF does for the safety of students. And I cannot complain whatsoever. I am a student here, and I feel completely safe. But when it comes to the future and what changes or innovations would you like to see in UFPD to strengthen trust even further, if there are any?
I would say that well, let me back up. I think we have a really good programs in place. I think we're in pretty good shape. The key is for us is to continue that and sustain it, right? Right. It's not a matter of developing a program. You check the block, now you shelve it over here, and you go and you do something else. You have to sustain those programs, otherwise, because it's nothing more. It's no better than the words it's written on, whether it's the screen or the piece of paper, right? So you have to sustain that as an organization. And so that means we have to train our officers and we have to engage our officers and they have to continue with that. And part of that is too, because remember, like we said earlier, our turnover is constant here. So we're constantly, every single semester, we're starting over to some degree with that preview, sharing what UFPD has to offer, making sure they understand the resources, making sure they understand how to contact us if they have a challenge or a problem. And that is every single semester, we have to start over as if this is a brand new program. And to me, that's the critical piece here. I do think we have the programs in place. Again, the sustainability is the key, and we're going to have to keep moving. So that's what we are pushing with our officers. And again, and for them, it's because we're no different, right? Being a police officer is somewhat of a young person's profession. And so you're bringing in people that are working midnight shifts and holidays and working their weekends when they were scheduled to be off. Maybe they had a rotation. Now they got to come out and work a football game. And we hire a lot of people, and this is not just the universities throughout the country. They hire police officers, they're new to the job, and they get here and they realize, oh my goodness, you mean I have to work night shift? I've got to work the weekends. I can't be off on this particular date. Oh, you cancel my days off because we have this dignitary coming into town. And the list goes on and on. And so because of that, we do experience some turnover. And so we have to constantly train our officers and keep them up to pace with our expectations, which is vital, because I can't get up here and tell you about all these things, and it's nothing more than lip service. And then when our community goes out to experience it, and it's not there. And that's why, again, it's a continual motor that keeps running, that you have to keep feeding. If you don't feed it, it'll shut down and it won't be there for you when you need it. And so that's why it's vital for us to continue with our training and on these particular topics for our officers.
Right, and it's great to know that UFPD especially is this well trained and this well known when it comes to all these different issues. But on a different note, I would like to, at least at UF or in the future, create like a student organization where we could sort of build trust between police and community in the local Gainesville community. I'm pretty new here, but I'm pretty sure that there's still some sort of issues that the Gainesville community may find with police officers, as in every community, even though it might not be major. Just on a off-topic note, do you think that this is a pretty good idea, or do you think that this could be something that could be done to help out with community trust here in Gainesville?
So the first response would be is that I think anytime you open up lines of communication, it has definite beneficial positive factors. And one of the things that I would say is, while I feel like we work hard to be transparent, to work with our community, help our community when they're in need, somebody's going to have a bad interaction. And so that is for us to evaluate and figure out, is that an employee specific issue that I need to deal with it? Is it more of a systemic issue? Or is it just a complete misinterpretation, which we get some of that too, right? Where, an individual just has a bad experience, but when you break it down, there's some culpability on that person's part too, right? So it's trying to weed in through all that and figure out, what we can do to maybe either, whether it's to improve our own efforts to train our people better or to help educate our community. And so I think there's a component of that. But one of the things that I would suggest to you is that we have a liaison already with student government that works directly with us to tackle some of these types of issues. And what I would like to do is maybe connect you with our community services division, and then maybe set something up with you and our liaison with student government to kind of talk through some of these. And identify, what the potential issues would be or challenges that the students may be having, so that we could work together collaboratively and try to tackle that and figure out a way that if there is an issue out there that we need to be addressing, let's do it. And things are constantly changing, right? I mean, if you look at how we function today from 10, 15 years ago, we've had to pivot as police because of different nuances. There's all kinds of things. Right now we're in the early stages, for example, of AI. How is that going to impact us moving forward, and how, we interact with our students, how we serve our students, how they are impacted by that. I could see a lot of things happening to our students potentially that they're negatively impacted by AI. And I'm not an anti-AI guy. I think there's a lot of really good opportunity there, but I also think that we have to be very careful and cautious as we learn more about this process. So the simple answer is I'd like to connect you with our community services division and probably student government and let you guys kind of talk it through and decide, is this a branch of student government that we need to take in that direction, or is it something more independent that you do? And I think collaboratively, I think as a team, you all can decide that.
I'd be more than happy to, honestly. And just because I started, I don't know if you know much about why Trust the Badge was started or how I started this organization. And also, I know I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I used to volunteer and be an explorer for my local police department back in Orlando. This is after the George Floyd incident, and I really saw the distrust between community and police. Even though it was in one police department across the country, I saw it affect my local communities, and I really felt like I wanted to do something to give a voice to law enforcement like you and to give voice to community leaders who want to speak on these topics. So I think it's really important, and I'm sure there's something that could be thought of to definitely build that trust more, or to give some sort of impact in the Gainesville community when it comes to these. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No. The only thing I would say in general terms is, first, thank you for the opportunity to meet you and
absolutely, thank you for coming on
your podcast. Absolutely, and I have very high expectations for our officers. There's no doubt about it. But we're also human. We make mistakes. What I ask of our officers is that if they do make a mistake, they try to correct it in the moment if they can. And then we work to improve. And our goal is to really look out after our students, faculty, staff, be a department that's there for them, that they feel comfortable reaching out to. And what that really boils down to is every single interaction that we have with every one of our officers. And if I have one officer that has a bad interaction, then we've got to work to try to mend that, because that can then spawn off into more communication negatively about the department. And so that's really important to us, is to be able to have really good communication with our community. Now, please understand, and those that watch this podcast understand, that a lot of times we're thrusted into pretty bad scenarios. We're going to do our best to try to control it, especially when safety's involved. And sometimes you're going to interact with an officer who's going to be extremely direct. They're going to tell you, stop, don't go there, and I need you to, and unless there's some sort of safety related issue, I need you to, listen to what they're saying, respect that, and understand that maybe they're really trying to solve a problem in the moment from a safety perspective. And then, if you have a point in time that you feel like the officer didn't treat you right, go back and engage that officer. Communication is a two-way street. Go talk to them and say, hey, look, I really appreciate the way that you interacted, and hopefully we do the right thing and we open up dialogue. We have a really positive conversation. And in my experience, most of the time, if you have a positive conversation with somebody, they explain kind of where they were coming from, you share your feelings and observations, we come together and we're stronger as a whole. And that's what this really comes down to, right? It's not us versus them. This is all of us working together to keep our campus safe, reporting things that are suspicious, making sure that we're communicating with one another and working together as a team. We are your police department. It is so vital that we communicate and work together and not against each other. And that's where I would say is just the most vital piece for us as a community is, again, let's work together. Let's be a team together. And I think if we do that, then we're going to reduce our risk for having, critical type, issues on our campus.
Well, thank you, Chief. That's a really great message. I think that's a great way to end off. I certainly believe after this conversation, UFPD is a really competent and very well organized agency. As a student myself here, I feel completely safe, and I feel like there's a good amount of trust between the students and the faculty with the police officers here as well. I really feel like this is a really good organization, and there's definitely something that can be learned. Some other agencies could learn from this agency especially. So yeah, thank you again for your time, Chief Knowles. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your perspectives when it comes to these topics. Thank you for listening to this episode of Trust the Badge. As always, follow at Trust the Badge on all social media platforms and follow on whatever podcast platform that you are listening on.